What is an obvious plot hole in TV series or movie that went massively unnoticed? If E.T. can levitate himself and a bunch of kids on bikes, why didn't he just levitate himself back into the ducking mothership in the opening scene, when he's left behind? Rick just chilled in the hospital for weeks, no new IV, no food, he just lay there. The clothes in Shrek. Fiona's dress always changes shape with her whenever she switches forms, but in Shrek 2, Shrek's clothes don't change and he ends up having to rob a dude to get some new duds. Then, at the end of the movie, when they turn back into ogres, Fiona's white dress magically turns back into the green one, which fits her perfectly of course, and Shrek's human clothes turn back into his ogre clothes, which he abandoned earlier after the robbery. Just rewatched the movie with my son and that made me irrationally angry. In Cars, when Lightning McQueen is in court and Doc dismisses the case, even pounds the gavel, then Sally waltzes in there and basically begs Doc to hold McQueen accountable. He then changes his mind and sentences him to fix the road. How can a judge declare a case dismissed and then take it back and sentence him? Always bugged me when I would listen to that movie while driving. The kids watched it all the time. Entangled. Rapunzel has been locked in a tower for her whole life, yet can swim when her and Flynn are escaping the palace guards. This always bothered me way more than it should. West Side Story. Tony runs into an entirely Hispanic neighborhood, yells Maria, and only one girl answers. Aladdin. His first wish is make me a prince, so Genie makes him a prince, and he goes to meet a princess with a big parade, etc. Then for the rest of the show, he's afraid that Princess Jasmine and the Sultan will discover that he is a street urchin, but he's a prince. Most powerful, non-religious being in the universe made him a prince. He didn't say give me a parade entrance like I'm a prince, he said make me a prince. So, he's a prince. Period. End of story. Prince. Boy in the striped pajamas. No one saw two little boys digging a tunnel in a Nazi concentration camp. If it was that easy to break in, everyone should have been tunneling out. A plot hole is when a movie establishes a logic and then goes against it. It's not just things that don't make sense in the real world, because you're supposed to suspend your disbelief for movies. Like in Lucy, when they say you only use 10% of your brain and then Lucy unlocks the other 90% and gets powers. It doesn't make sense because the premise of only using 10% of the brain is not true, but you're supposed to suspend your disbelief for the movie and accept the plot as it's been given to you. So, the biggest plot hole that I've seen is in Butterfly Effect. In the movie, the main character travels back in time to specific memories from his childhood, but every time he changes something and returns to the present, his whole life is different, and it's been different since he made the change in the past. For example, he goes to the past and tries to stop a bomb from going off, and he blows off both his hands. When he returns to the present, his whole life had changed because he no longer has hands. He lived that whole time without hands. The plot hole happens when he goes to prison and wants to prove to his cellmate that he's Jesus, or something. So he goes back to the past and stabs his hands. Following the movie's logic, he was supposed to have lived his whole life with those wounds and scars, including going to prison with those scars already on his hands. But what actually happens is he gets to the present, and the wounds magically appear before his cellmate's eyes, convincing him that he's Jesus. The movie breaks its own time-traveling logic. In Once Upon a Time, the town is not enterable by normal people outside. How are they getting their supplies? In Criminal Minds, Hotch got stabbed 9 times the same day Reed got shot in the leg. In the next episode, staged 30 days later, Hotch was normal and returned to duty. It took like half a season before Reed was off crutches cane and was able to do normal stuff in the field. Not sure if plot hole, but the least believable part of Endgame is when Tony Stark drives up in an Audi e-tron and it makes revving noises. It's a fully electric car. In episode 2F09, when Itchy plays Scratchy's skeleton like a xylophone, he strikes the same rib twice in succession, yet he produces 2 clearly different tones. I mean, what are we to believe? That this is a magic xylophone? Or something? Haha. Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder. In the movie Sleeping Beauty, An evil witch makes a curse prophecy that the princess will prick her finger on a spinning wheel and die on her 16th birthday. They should have just cut off her fingers. It's what the Brothers Grimm would have wanted. There's a Buffy the Vampire Slayer episode where a hot new teacher wants to bang Xander. It turns out she's some kind of insect monster that breeds with humans. They kill her, but at the end of the episode, show that she successfully laid some eggs in the school. It never came up again. Doesn't bother me anymore after someone presented me with a possible theory, but as much as I enjoyed Zootopia, I couldn't help but wonder what the predators are eating if they no longer hunt for prey. Someone told me they might eat insects or fish. Edit. Wow, this really blew up. There is no way a single wizard's fireball, 3rd level spell, would do jack against Demogorgon in the Stranger Things endgame. Scarlet Witch has a heavy Russian or Ukrainian accent in her first appearance in the Marvel films, Age of Ultron maybe, and then completely lost the accent in future movies. Not sure much a plot hole as an oversight, but it bothers me. Obviously, this hasn't gone unnoticed by anybody on Earth, as far as I know, but X-Files, Scully's unflagging incredulity, Episode 10, Oh Mudder. There must be a scientific explanation for these ghosts. But there isn't, and she sees them too. Episode Y, Oh Mudder. There must be a scientific explanation for the lava demons. But there isn't, and she sees them too, and seems to have forgotten about ghosts. Episode Z, Oh Mudder. There must be a scientific explanation for the man lamprey that lives in water treatment plant pipes. But there isn't, and she sees it too, and seems to have forgotten about ghosts and lava demons and green men and grey men and smoking men and etc. The Breaking Bad timeline is way too compressed. In the space of 1 year, Walt gets diagnosed with cancer, starts his meth dealing business with Krazy 8, then Tuco, then Gus, then Mike, all of whom he kills, has a daughter born, has his wife start an affair, leave him, and return, and has his cancer go into remission. Hank kills 3 drug dealers, I know. Mike finished one off, gets promoted twice, gets severely wounded, goes through a bout of depression, and makes a nearly full recovery. I guess this is technically possible, but no one seems to notice that a lot of stuff has been happening at once. Toy Story, Buzz Lightyear still throws around children even though the whole point of his arc was him not believing he is a toy. In Vikings they live in Kattegat, which is in Denmark, but they clearly live in a fjord. Denmark is completely flat. Additionally, the fjords are only found in Norway, and more especially along the western coast of Norway, and in one episode they go to Sweden, which is portrayed as a relatively easy walk, but that would entail wayward walk from western coast of Norway across the entire country over a massive mountain range to reach the border of Sweden. In Frozen, Anna falls into a stream that should have been frozen solid by Elsa's ice magic. In I, Robot, the Doctor kills himself because he can't get a message out due to being under surveillance 24/7. Yet somehow he makes a robot in secret. Couldn't he have used his secret area to get the message out, or given the robot some instructions to do that without killing himself? In that 70s show, Eric has a dream where Ed is playing Obi-Wan's ghost from Empire Strike Back. Empire came out in 1980, and the entirety of the show takes place in the 70s. How did Eric know about that scene? In the Vampire Diaries they said vampires cannot be witches, because they are abomination of nature. You could only be one or the other. Then on further seasons they introduce vampire witches hybrids. Endgame. Spoilers. When they are battling Thanos in Wakanda he ends up snapping his fingers and we all know what happens. It is daytime when he snaps. Start of Endgame. Hawkeye having a picnic with his family in the middle of the day when poof, Africa and the US are in quite different time zones. Ocean's 11. How'd they get the bags containing the flyers for hookers into the vault? Interstellar. How they landed on a planet with approximately same escape velocity needed as Earth and got off it using only their lander vehicle. I hate myself for saying this, but the time turner in Harry Potter, if that kind of magic exists, then nothing bad needs to ever happen. Or, if somehow bad things still happened and we still ended up with the same plot points, then the time turner should have been a major weapon in their arsenal during the hunt for the Horcruxes. Josh Radnor doesn't sound like Bob Saget. He'll never sound like Bob Saget. Back to the Future Part 2. 2015 Biff goes back to 1955 to give 1955 Biff the sports almanac. So after he gives young Biff the almanac, he should have returned to an alternate 2015. How could he return to the same 2015 after he already changed the past? Furthermore, how could Marty and Doc end up in an alternate 1985 by traveling back from the non-alternate 2015? They would have to travel back to 1955 when old Biff handed over the almanac to young Biff, then travel back to 1985. It makes no sense. In Dexter, when he is a child, he falls on a fence, and because he has a super rare blood type, they have to call his bio dad to get blood for him. This may not necessarily be a plot hole because not everyone may understand blood typing. But Dexter is Abe Neg, which means he can get Abe Neg, Aneg, Oneg, and Neg in that order. It would be absolutely unheard of for a hospital to not have any type negative units to give him. Furthermore, I don't expect the average person to know this, but as someone who works in a lab, and in blood bank specifically, they also wouldn't be able to do a directed donation in a quick enough time frame for them to actually be able to give Dexter his bio dad's blood before he died due to bloodless. Even if they had a Red Cross or similar on site, which they certainly couldn't have considering they have no type negative units, they would still have to take the time to process the unit, pre-form testing on it to make sure it was safe to give, and then get it to Dexter, all of which takes days to do. Not to mention they wouldn't be able to take more than 1 unit, at most 2 if they did a double red cell donation. Basically the whole scenario would never happen. I know the ban is lifted, but endgame spoilers ahead. Why the hell did Thor let people play Fortnite in his house while he was trying to distract himself from Thanos? Who is in Fortnite? In the office, sometimes there is a huge conference table in the conference room and sometimes there are 30 chairs. Who is switching these out 10 times a day depending on what kind of meeting Michael wants to have? Ducking Toby? Probably Toby. Not so obvious to us guys, but my girl noticed in the movie IT. The girl Beverly goes swimming and strips to her underwear in front of the boys. Yet the day before she was stealing tampons from the drugstore. My girl thought it illogical that she would have stripped and swam if she was on her period. Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels. The whole premise is that they collect a bunch of money so this guy with an superhuman ability to read his opponents in poker can play a high stakes poker game. Okay, great. They get the money and play. Fine. They bet back and forth. He's bluffing with a pair of 6s because he knows through his amazing reading ability that the other guy only has a pair of 7s and is hoping he will fold. The major problem is that the villain is cheating and can see our hero's cards are only a pair of 6s and therefore the villain would know his pair of 7s is better. The hero would be using his amazing reading ability to read a guy who knows he has the best hand. It doesn't matter what their hands are if he reads the villain as a guy who is confident his hand is better. A really good poker player would read that as a guy who is confident in his winning hand and would not try to bluff him. It is a serious issue with a great movie. 28 days later. So an important plot point of the film is that the zombies will die eventually because they lack reasoning to eat, as they are not flesh craving undead but people infected with a virus that make them very, very angry. So when you are infected with this virus you begin to vomit a lot of fluids up to and including blood. By all that reasoning, wouldn't all of them been dead in a matter of days because they can't drink water either? Like they sprint after every victim they see and vomits up a lot of fluids. So wouldn't they have a mobile rather quickly because of dehydration? Not really a big one, but still a plot hole. Also spoilers for Endgame. At the end of the movie, Ned, Peter's friend, acts like he hasn't seen him in 5 years. This would mean that he wasn't killed by Thanos. But why is he still in a school 5 years later? Maybe I just didn't understand it. Edit. Oh my Bob. This brought up more attention than I expected. Home Alone. When Kevin uses Buzz's BB gun to shoot the action figures down the laundry chute, he reloads the chamber with an in and out motion after every shot. Then when he shoots Harry in the nuts and Marv in the face later on in the movie, he does the opposite and loads the chamber in and out in the motion. I've seen the movie countless times and that always bothered me. Ant-Man. Pime particle reduces the distance of atoms, apparently, so you can't go subatomic cause you'd at one point reach a spot where the atoms of your body visibly collide. In Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, a main character takes his love interest out into the woods for a date. The movie took place in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean on a man-made island. In the OA, why the duck would hap buy sauce containing tomato if he knew he was allergic and that OA would serve it to him like she's the blind one? How do you duck up so bad? First, humans can't be used as batteries in the Matrix because they require much more energy than they output. Second, when S.H.I.E.L.D. falls in Captain America, the Winter Soldier, where does the team from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. get their continued funding? Quinjet's not cheap to store and resupply. Game of Thrones. How does the Hound get past the Lannister guards into the Red Keep? There's a battle going on and the guards aren't going to notice a 6'5+ dude sneaking around. So many gowns and clothes for a 3-hour tour. I'm looking street you ginger. Gilligan's Island. Supernatural is full of M. But the big one. The Winchesters have a little brother that they seal in an interdimensional prison with 2 warring archangels in season 3 and promptly forget he exists for the whole rest of the show. They bring him up at one point and it's basically oh him? He's ducked. No way Lucifer and Michael didn't shred his soul. Best not to bother trying. Ned Stark did not demand trial by combat. Not exactly a plot hole, but in the movie Battleship we never get real confirmation that the aliens are evil. They spend the whole movie trying desperately to re-establish contact with their home world, but they never regress on the humans, only responding to attacks with proportional retaliation. We only think their plan is to invade because of a psychic vision from a protagonist we know is unreliable at the best of times and was concussed earlier that day. The aliens' most devastating weapon isn't a nuke that would create mass casualties, but an AI-driven ball with a whip-like weapon capable of distinguishing between civilians and threats for surgical strikes which minimize collateral damage. I don't think they committed a single war crime the whole movie. What modern military that has actually gone to war can claim that? I think our Navy murders a peaceful envoy in this movie. Edit. Nobody saw this movie and I keep bringing it up 10 years later in the hopes that someone will listen to me. Feels bad, man.